Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we are continuing on with episode 6 of Kindred, which somehow just keeps getting worse. And I am joined again by Candace.
Hi.
I just, I guess I'll have to start in chronological order of this show just to, break down all my thoughts. But, what?
My hatred for this show knows no bounds.
Like, I know we talked briefly about you mentioning that there was a different, I think, writer on every episode or
Yep. And
somebody.
director.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It really shows how disjointed this episode specifically feels like when we start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The show is such a bummer. It's really bumming me out.
Yeah.
There was this person on Twitter that I saw yesterday that made a list of black woman led television shows that are on right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just being like, hey, if you're looking for this, here it is. And it was
Yeah.
lovely. And I went through it,
Hmm.
and Kindred was there. And I wrote respectfully, not trying to trash your thread at all. Just if anybody sees this, do not watch this show. It is terrible. Watch the read the book, listen to the
Yeah.
audiobook. There's also, an analysis show that's really great that you can get on Spotify or wherever you get your pods. But
Yeah.
do not watch this show. Octavia Butler is rolling around in her grave. She would have never signed off on this. Do not watch this
Yeah.
show. It will hurt you and it will do you mental harm. You will take psychic
Yeah.
damage from this show. Do not
Truly.
watch it.
Yeah. In this one specifically, it it somehow glorifies slavery more than the
Yep.
last few.
Yep. Yep.
And the things they talk about where Dana's like, it's really hard being in the past, like, are not that difficult of issues.
No. All the things that everyone's complaining about are tiny. It's all minutia.
Yeah.
And I have serious beef. As you go through chronologically, I'm excited to add my beef to your
Yeah.
notes because I've got such, I mean, I call
Mhm.
me a butcher because I've got fucking sides whole ass sides of beef. I am just, oh boy.
That was pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. That needs to be
God
on a
damn.
t-shirt.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe a sticker. Maybe we do a cute little sticker.
Yeah, this is what happens when I get fired up. And they fired me up, let me tell you. I'm
Yeah.
fired. Whew,
Yeah.
whew,
Same.
hot and
Big
spicy.
same.
Mhm.
Mhm. Let's just get into it. Let's just
Tear the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, truly. Oh my god. So we start off the episode with more telling, not showing, of just Dana being like, "Oh, I feel like the present day is becoming really hazy,"
Mhm.
And it's one thing where in the book we get Dana's internal monologue, but her just saying it out loud feels really cheesy and kind of cheap.
I also feel like when Dana feels like the past, like the future is far away, she
Mhm.
doesn't she's such a sturdy and steadfast character in the book
Mhm.
that even though she can feel it kind of slipping away from her a little bit,
Mhm.
like she still is able to maintain a connection with the future in a way that keeps her moving, you know?
Mhm.
And I very much feel like this is another one of those things that's the result of them trying to make, you know, a multi-season show
Mhm.
out of a book that's fewer than 500 pages long. It
Yeah.
feels, you know what it feels like? It feels like Peter Jackson's The Hobbit. That's what it feels like.
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings, excellent movie series.
Mhm.
Does the books well, right? There are
Mhm.
three fairly thick books in the Lord of
Mhm.
the Rings trilogy, right? You get three very stout movies that are 3 hours long, rightly so, right? Your source material is huge. You're packing it all into a 3 hour movie. They could have done a miniseries for each book that could have
Mhm.
lasted a million seasons, right? Then you've got The Hobbit. Peter Jackson was like, I'm going to do a trilogy again. No need. The Hobbit is a
Yeah.
much smaller book, and there's only one of them. He should have just done a 3 hour movie, right? One 3 hour movie would have been fine. Even a two-parter, I would have
Mhm.
accepted. Two and a half hour movies, fine, right? Give me 5 hours. But don't give me 3 separate movies, dude. Like,
Yeah.
it starts feeling like there's like it's threadbare almost. And that's what this
Mhm.
feels like in this show. It feels like they're dragging things out. Like, for me as an audience viewer, like as an audience member, like, it has felt long watching it because it's so very deeply unpleasant.
Mhm.
It hasn't felt long because she's been there so long, right? Like, she gets there and she gets back in time and Celeste is pregnant. And then in this episode, Celeste delivers her baby. So the fact that she's talking about how hazy it is and how foggy it is, she's been there for like 3 days at that point, right? Or maybe a
Yeah.
week. Like, it's not like she's been there for like months and months at a time, like in the book where she's gone for like, she's there for over a year, I think, at one point. Like, she's there for like, more than one
Yeah.
year at one point.
And I feel like
So,
oh, sorry.
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
I feel like what they could have done is that they were like, "Hey, we really want to turn this into a series." They could have said that this is going to be a loose adaptation. Like they could have
Mm-hmm.
said this is going to be
Yep.
we're going to change a lot of things. We're going to make it based on but not an adaptation kind of thing. Like you could have turned it into your own fiction
Right.
and made it a series, but trying to like adapt the book and like it's almost like you're like sifting through the smallest little details to make
Mm-hmm.
it longer, which is just
Yeah.
not working out for anybody. Like if you really want to make this a series, you could explore that full year Kevin is in
Yep.
the past. You could have done like you could have built the relationships around different people. You could see Kevin's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Like 2 episodes of Kevin's past at least or something like
Yeah.
that. Like Kevin being alone there for a year
Yeah.
instead of
I mean, even the way the book is divided up, right? With like
yeah.
when she meets Kevin for the first time, that whole like backstory could have
Mhm.
been an entire episode, right? The
Yeah.
episodes are anywhere from 35 to 50 minutes long. So
Mhm.
like, why not just do a whole episode that's devoted to the way that they met, right?
Mhm.
Like, show what's going on with Dana, show Dana, I don't know why Kevin goes back in time with her more than just the one time that he does in the book or whatever. Like, that to me
Yeah.
is insane. But like, have an episode, because part of the understanding that Dana is going through has
Mhm.
to do with how she feels about Kevin before and after she goes home, right?
Mhm.
And how he acts and what he does and whatever. So in my head, I'm like, do a full episode, right?
Mhm.
Have your first couple episodes of just Dana going into the past, her coming home and talking to Kevin not really understanding her, him being like, why aren't these fucking books put away, right? All the shit that like happens in the story for her. And then
Mhm.
have an episode where like you see them fall in love and you realize it's not really that great, right? And then maybe the first half of the episode is that
Mhm.
flashback, and then this back half of the episode is wherever Dana is thinking about this, right, on the plantation.
Mhm.
Then the next episode like finishes out what happened in the plantation, and then you give the tail end of the story that, hey, we're completely alone, her family doesn't talk to her, he doesn't talk to his family, he expects her to be his fucking secretary, and you end with her being fucking really resentful because this is exactly
Mhm.
what's expected of me on the plantation, right? Being able to kind of show that shift and that dichotomy of the roles that Dana is trying to assume for 2 different white men that are asking for her time
Mhm.
would have been amazing, right? That's part of what this book is about, right? Is what Black women specifically, Black people, yes, but Black women specifically,
Mhm.
are asked to do and put through, right? The pain that we're expected to revisit over and over and over again on
Mhm.
behalf of white people, whether it's something that's positive or something that's seemingly innocuous, right?
Yeah.
Like, and actually harmful. Like, there's a lot of shades of that, right? And of abuse cycles and things like that happen in Kindred that we just don't get
Mhm.
in this. She's like sitting there fucking like laying around with Kevin in bed. And then like capitalism ahoy, apparently. Like, he's like, oh yeah, whenever I need to like remember the past or remember the future, when I was out there, I was like in the fucking wilderness and I was tripping on acid. So I'm like, okay, so then you had a drug problem too, potentially,
Yes.
not just alcohol. Okay. Oh yeah, once upon a time when I was like, doing acid in the desert or whatever, it was really
Mhm.
crazy. I was tripping so hard up a Big Bear. Which like he says Big Bear like this woman knows what Big Bear is, and I'm just like, I would be
I
willing to
didn't
bet that only Midwestern Black people know what Big Bear is.
I didn't
I
even
know
know what
what
Big
Big
Bear
Bear is
was.
because I used to work for a resort company.
Mhm.
Big Bear, I think, is in like Wisconsin or something. It's like a
Mm.
resort town kind of thing. Anyway, so he's
It
up at
doesn't
Big
matter.
Bear doing his acid, and he's like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I found my way back by going Walgreens, Walmart, Target. Walgreens, Walmart, Target. And I'm like, what? Why? Why? Why?
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
First of all, Walmart is notorious for treating their black employees like absolute trash.
Yeah.
So why we're doing Walmart, I don't know. Walgreens, Target. It's just stupid. And I
Mhm.
don't understand like what they're doing
I don't
here.
either. The other thing I
Like,
want to mention really quick is most people who are alcoholics, like I feel like
mhm.
there's not a lot of people who are both alcoholics and drug addicts. So it's like, what are we doing with this man? What's
So
happening here?
that I'll give padding on because when people have a problem,
Yeah.
they're they tend to self-medicate.
Mhm.
So there are definitely a lot of people who are just drunks, and there are definitely a lot of
Yeah.
people who are just drug addicts, but there are people who are addicts for whatever they can get their hands on,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
like if they don't have any drinks, they'll do drugs. If they don't have drugs, they'll drink, the kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? Everything they do is too much because they are an addict, right?
Mhm.
So that does exist. And that's what makes it even scarier for me because that means Dana's not safe either. If he can't really control himself and you're at a time when like again, like drugs were something that were kind of nebulous. It wasn't like,
Mhm.
you know, we have treatment programs for you to go dry out. Like people just accepted that someone was their drunk uncle, right? Like it wasn't like now where that was considered, you know, a bad look, right?
Mhm.
People were just fucking drunk back then, right? Like nobody
Mhm.
really would mess you up because you were a drunk or because you smoked too much opium or whatever, right? You might have been like a social outcast, but like
Mhm.
it wasn't like today when it was like considered like a disease and a problem. We have to solve this, right? It wasn't like that.
Yeah.
So he has nobody looking out for him back then, and she obviously doesn't know that he had a problem.
I just
So like
I'm astounded one that Dana has not picked up on it. You know what I mean?
agree, and then he hasn't said anything. Like
Yeah.
they trust each other enough to fuck in a bedroom in the past. And like also, right? So she's supposed to be playing the slave on a plantation, but she
Mhm.
stays up all night with him, talking and fucking all night in this room
Yeah.
on this plantation. Like, and then like fucking how much battery life does this goddamn iPhone have?
I
I need
was
to
just
know.
thinking that
I need
a
to know.
2016 iPhone, which we all remember had like 3 hours maximum
Like
of
what?
battery life. You know, like that it was the era of portable chargers was
Yeah,
because
man.
of that iPhone.
Like, I don't understand it.
I
I'm
don't get
watching
it.
it and I'm like, didn't he fall asleep with this music on like a minute ago? And like, you know, they didn't have time to recharge their phones when they got back to their time. Like, get out of here. So
Yeah.
then, like, the thing that really fucked me up though, the thing that just really just got me that
Mhm.
like I had to push pause. This was my pause moment. I know when something's bad because I have to push pause and get up and stretch and walk around and take a lap because
Mhm.
I have to, you know, walk it off. Um, So this man listens to X-Ray Specs.
Mhm.
He has a healthy adoration of hip hop.
Mhm.
He has a Gil Scott Heron album in his collection, which is
Mhm.
like ultra rare and most people know nothing about outside of the black community.
Mhm.
Okay. But then Dana's standing there in the mirror and she's putting a plait in her head, right? She's braiding her hair just into one braid,
Yep.
right? Like a French braid or something down the back of her head.
Mhm.
And this mayonnaise man
Mhm.
looks at her and says, "Oh, is that a cornrow?"
Like
Okay, so you know all about black culture. You don't know what a fucking cornrow is, bruh. You've never
literally.
seen a Kardashian with a cornrow. You've never seen
Yeah.
Lil Bow Wow with a cornrow. You don't know what cornrows are. This isn't common knowledge to you. I'd argue that in 1999, most white people knew what a cornrow was. It looks like
Mhm.
a row of corn on someone's head. Does this look like a row of corn? Then it's not a fucking cornrow. Why would he be asking, is that a cornrow? It's like the writers were like, he's white. He doesn't know about that stuff. Fuck you, dude.
Literally.
Yes, he does. Why wouldn't he?
Everybody knows.
Like, what are you saying? Is this a cornrow? Oh boy. I
Yeah.
just, like, it's offensive, you
Mhm.
know? It's offensive.
It's just so random. You know what
He's
I
just
mean?
like he's just mystifying her black womanhood or something. It's like he's fetishizing her. Oh wow, teach me about your culture, Pocahontas. Is this a cornrow? Like, ew,
Yeah.
get the fuck out of here, John Smith. Ew,
Ew.
ew.
It's just I don't I don't get it. Like I really don't get it. Like what are they
Yo,
trying
like,
to do with Kevin? It doesn't make sense because you
I
can't
don't
have
know.
the most woke white dude to ever grace this earth on one foot and then on the other foot see this woman braiding her hair and be like, is that a cornrow? Like
Yo, like,
what?
I've never wanted to punch somebody more in my life. I don't think. Like, I've
Yeah.
never wanted to punch somebody more. Like, I wouldn't punch that actor because it's not his fault. But like his character, like if I saw him on the street,
Hmm.
I'm throwing hands. Like I can't. Like oh no. Oh,
Because
it's
you
getting me fired up even now, and it's been
yeah,
a whole like 15 hours since I watched this, and I'm still mad.
yeah. You have two options when you're gonna make this type of character. You can either make him the most woke white dude ever, like they tried, or you can make him completely inept with any knowledge of like any other culture except white
Yes.
people. And
Yes.
they're
And that's
trying
what
to
it should
do
have been,
both.
honestly. That's what it should have
Yeah.
been. It would have been more interesting to me if he were like, because again, I'm a black person. I am
Hmm.
femme. I am a fab, right? Like,
Hmm.
I have dated a lot of white men.
Hmm.
I have gone on tons of dates with white men who know nothing about black culture, and it is hard. Like, it is extremely hard. It is not fun.
Hmm.
Having a dude be like, I wasn't sure if you dated white guys is awful. Having a dude, like, the first time that he gets into bed with you at night and you put your silk bonnet on so that your hair doesn't break on your fucking pillow, and having him ask, why do you wear a hat to bed, is awful. Having to explain that the first time to someone is not fun,
Yeah.
right? Having someone like see you naked for the first time and then like marvel at the color of your nipples, right? Like, just
Hmm.
weird things that you would that like, you know, white women don't have to deal with, right? Nobody else goes through that. Only women of color really go through that. And like, all of that is rude and shitty and gross and disgusting. If you want to tell me how beautiful I am, then say I'm beautiful. You don't need to tell me that I am beautiful for a black girl, right? Like,
Hmm.
that's not something you have to say, but it's something they say all the time. So having Dana, especially in 2016, like, it would have been very interesting to have Kevin be a white man who comes from a racist family who's like, I'm better than that, right? This
Hmm.
would have been awesome. If he was like, I'm better than that, I can date anyone, and he was like a young professional, maybe he was also a writer like he is in the book, rather than being a fucking stupid waiter, right?
Hmm.
Like, if they had been like, you know what, he's a writer, he's a professional, he thinks that he knows everything, and then he
Hmm.
meets her and realizes how little he knows when he goes
Hmm.
back in time, and his first instinct is to protect himself and not her. That would have been a very interesting story
Yeah.
arc, right? Talk to me about what his journey looks like. I wouldn't have
Hmm.
minded him being a main character. If you're going to talk to me about what his journey as a white man in 2016, trying to defy his racist family and prove that he's actually an ally, and then is in a position where he has to be an ally, fuck yeah. Show me that show. That's way more compelling. I want to know all about his struggles. I want to know all about his internalized racism, right? His
Hmm.
internalized prejudice that he's had kind of put into his mind by osmosis. I want to see the moments where he's ashamed of what he thinks or says or does because he
Hmm.
realizes it's a fucking cop out because he's doing what's easy and not what's best. Like, give me that conflict. I live for that shit. Give it to me.
Hmm.
Yes, I love it. It's not even about the fact that he's in it and that he's dumb, right? Like, fine, give me a dumb white guy who knows nothing about fucking black culture. Throw
Yeah.
him into this. Have him have to learn from her. Have him have to take orders from her, because that's something
Mhm.
that happens a lot, right? I get into a relationship with a white guy. Something happens. I have to tell him something that I am
Mhm.
an expert on because I have studied it, because I'm an educated and intelligent person, right? And he looks at
Mhm.
me like, "Well, you can't possibly be smarter than me." I can't tell you how many dates have ended that way, right? I can't be smarter than him. That's impossible. He's a white guy, right? How could
I
I know more about medieval history? Oh, you haven't read any madrigals, but I've read a whole goddamn book of them? Okay, well, let's break it down. No, I still know more than you, because, I mean, if it were your stuff, if it were your
Mhm.
history, then I would
Mhm.
trust it. But this is my history we're talking about here. I'm like,
Mhm.
right. First of all, my history is your history because I'm
Yeah.
also American. And
Mhm.
second of all, no, right? Like, get over yourself.
This
But
is why
like,
I'm
it
so happy
happens.
I don't have to date anymore.
Listen, like, it's a jungle out there, all right? Like, it's bad. And this is like, I mean, I haven't been single in 11 years. So like,
Yeah.
this is forever ago. This is
Mhm.
2011 I'm talking about. Like, might as well be a
Mhm.
century now, right? Like, so things, I mean, I imagine things are more progressive now, especially with Gen Z, people taking it on themselves to
Mhm.
learn more media being available to allow people to learn more, right? And have a better understanding of Black culture, right? Just Insecure
Mhm.
alone, I'm sure, is helping a lot of white people better understand Black culture. But like, I don't understand why this movie would, why this show, excuse me,
Mhm.
would like give you this like two sides of Kevin that are clashing like that.
It's
Like
it
it's
doesn't make
so
sense.
it's sloppy. Like
It's
it's
because the
downright
different
sloppy.
writers and shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this one you can tell there was not really any reference to Kevin being woke this episode at all.
None. None.
Like, he just
Not a
seemed
drop.
like a dun, hold on.
Mhm.
He just seemed like a dumb white man.
Yep.
And that was it. Like, that
Yep.
was his, he was a Mary Sue of white men.
Yeah.
A John Doe? Is that what the Mary's, is that what that is?
I don't think it exists. Just like a slut is a woman, but there's no man slut. So you got to have man slut now. So
Mm.
a Manny Sue. There you go.
There we go. That's fine. I'll take it.
Yeah, I agree. We get to the next scene and he's just standing around in regular clothes talking like Patrick Starr and everyone's fine with it. His tattoos are showing. Nobody asks a single question. The
Oh my
only
god.
people that have tattoos at this time are sailors and native people and
I
probably
hate the way he
Africans.
stands. I don't know if that's weird
Yo,
or not.
no, it's not weird. It's 100%. That's what I'm saying. When I look at him, that's all I see is Patrick Starr.
Yeah. Like,
Like,
there's just not
oh,
a
hey,
thought.
SpongeBob.
Yeah.
What are we doing back here in the past, Dana? I don't understand.
I'm
What? Yeah,
confused.
I'll teach Rufus music. That seems fine. Like, get the fuck
Yeah.
out of here.
And
Go
then, like,
somewhere.
both of them being like, yeah, it's not that bad. I don't really mind being in the past. I'm like, you're insane. Like, that's
Yo.
because they literally are glorifying slavery right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's
also,
bad.
can we talk about the bedpan for a second?
Outrageous.
First of all, Mr. Woke Sir Kevin, you're telling me isn't throwing out his own pee?
And poop. Did you see the interior of that shit?
I did not. I
It
was
was rough.
furiously writing notes. I
It
did
was
not look.
rough.
I'm glad I
Listen,
didn't look.
it's rough inside. There's particulate. It's rough. It's not good.
Why? If
I
okay,
assume it's also her leavings as well.
I
But I'm
don't
like, it's the third date and you're shitting in a pot that a man has shit in already? Sure.
no,
Go off, queen.
no,
Like,
absolutely not. Like, having been around men long enough, I think they would just go outside. Like, I feel
yeah.
like if anybody I knew nowadays came back into the past with me, and I looked at them up and down and I said, if you pee in that fucking pot, you're taking it out. They would just be like, I'm just gonna pee outside. Like, it's not inconvenient to just pee outside when you can just stand.
Yeah.
I don't
Fine.
understand.
I'm fine with pee, right? Like, it is what it is. It's sterile. It's not a big deal, right? I don't mind. Do what you want with the pee. It's the number two that I'm just like, find a fucking bush.
Yeah.
Like, find a
First of
bush,
all,
dude. No,
I have a
not around
cat.
me, not in the room with me. Go
Point two
somewhere.
seconds. If that pee or if any sort of feces or pee or anything did not end up in the litter box, because sometimes she misaims, which is why
Mm-hmm.
she has a dome now, because she
Mm-hmm.
kept accidentally standing inside the little litter box and pooping out the back. So she has a dome now because we've solved that problem. But having had that happen, and there's nothing in this pot, point 0.5 seconds after this occurs, the entire room smells. So you're
Yep.
telling me they just like had sex with everything smelling like shit and pee?
I don't understand.
No,
I don't
I don't
understand.
believe it.
Listen, if I can't wash my body before sex, I'm not having sex. So,
Yeah.
um, that's
Oh my
kind of
god.
it too, right? Like, whatever. Now, I'm not, this is not me judging anybody who can have sex without washing their entire body. I'm just saying I
Mhm,
prefer to know that I'm in a very good space before I'm like,
mhm.
let's spread this love. Personally.
I'm
So,
astounded.
like, so then Dana goes to the cookhouse after she
Mhm,
fucking throws out the pot of excrement, and
mhm.
Aunt Sarah has to yell at Carrie and tell her to take off her new dress that
Yeah.
Margaret that Margaret has forced her to wear because Margaret wants everybody to look nice or whatever, and like they have people
Mhm.
coming.
Mhm.
And I'm like, and she like gets mad at her mom for telling her to take off this dress. And I'm just like, so you mean to tell me that in slavery, a young woman who's enslaved and who like has a hard time, and in the book, it's not like, it doesn't seem like Carrie was like born mute. It more feels like Carrie was made mute when she was young. Like she never learned, she never got the ability to speak because of the environment that she was in. That it was horror,
Yeah.
it was horrific, right? It was a
Mhm.
horrible environment. Her brothers and sisters were all sold off, and like she was
Mhm.
all that remained, right? Like that's the kind of the way that it feels. It feels like trauma less than like, because she's smart. It's not a mental issue, right?
Mhm.
It seems like it's more traumatic is the
Mhm.
reason she doesn't talk. And like you have this girl that can't speak, can't defend herself, completely mute. She's angry with her mom that her mom is asking her to take off a fucking dress that her slave owner gave her, which I don't
Mhm.
think that would have been a big fight between her and her
No.
mother. And like again, I can't stress enough how fucking horrible it is to know that this show, unless they completely change it, like unless they
Mhm.
drastically change it and Dana never was descended from Rufus,
Yeah.
right? They're either going to have her fall in love with Rufus and pretend that they have a good relationship, which is going to fuck up the
Mhm.
end of the book because Dana has no reason to lose her arm and like
Mhm.
scramble and struggle away if Rufus doesn't try to attack and assault her and rape her, right? If that
Yeah.
never happens and Rufus is a nice guy, then that completely negates the whole ending of the book, right?
Mhm.
Number one. So either they're going to have her fall in love with her captor, which
Mhm.
disgusting,
Yes.
or they're going to force us as the audience to watch a mute woman who can't
Mhm.
scream, can't yell, can't call for help, cannot ask for any kind of self-defense, get raped and brutalized by this boy. Which I'm like, why are those our options?
I don't know. I don't know.
And like
I
I get it happens to Alice in the book, right? I understand
Mhm.
Alice is the one who gets raped by Rufus. She
Mhm.
finds a way around it by understanding that her safety will not be compromised. And the reason that it makes sense for Alice, right, to be
Mhm.
like, well, it could be worse is because it was worse for Alice. It's not
Mhm.
like with Winnie where Winnie's like, well, at least I get my own room. Like, no, fuck that. That's dumb, right?
Mhm.
But Alice has been visited with such torture from her running away with her husband, right?
Mhm.
When the dogs attack her and she regresses to childhood and she has brain damage, they have to shave her head. Like
Mhm.
she goes through a traumatic event. So when Rufus is like, listen, you either love me and be with me,
Mhm.
or that's it, or like, or you get harmed physically. It
Mhm.
it makes sense why she would be like, I don't want to be harmed physically again. I
Yeah.
don't think I could take it. This is mental torture. I can
Mhm.
deal with that. I can find a way to make that okay. I have
Mhm.
kids now that I love, right? That's what's
Yeah.
going to get me through each day are my kids. Like
Yeah.
that's a whole other fucking story.
Mhm.
This is, I am just a person, and one day I'm not going to be a
Existing.
person anymore. I'm going to be an
Yeah.
object, and I'm going to be used, and I'm going to be defiled, and I'm going to be forced. And then she's going to kill herself? Like if you're going to just swap her out for Alice? Like
I don't know.
what kind of
I'm stressed.
ungodly, like it feels so anti-black lady. If I didn't know that black people had made this and I didn't know that black women had been involved in the creation of this, I'd be like, what is this? Like it feels so wrong. Like
Mhm.
every frame just feels wrong. Like
Mhm.
even when the cinematography is nice and even when it like is well shot, like
Mhm.
it feels bad to watch. Like it feels so bad.
Yeah. Another thing I do have to mention though, um, just throwing in the fact that with everything also being wrong, um, for some reason they put completely incorrect subtitles on multiple parts of this show. Like
I
with
noticed
this,
that
yeah,
they like cut out some of the things that they say, and then other
mhm,
times the subtitles are just wrong.
yeah, like with the scene before this with Thomas and Luke. First of all, the scene of Thomas and Luke just speaking to each other. What the fuck is that? Like they're doing so much wrong. Like okay, so we have the Carrie situation, which is just like they've basically eliminated Alice as a character. We don't
I
get
mean,
Alice anymore.
she's just that little girl. Like we see
Yeah.
Alice, but she's just like a passing
Yeah.
figure in
Alice does
Olivia's
not
cabin.
exist to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they also switched up the relationship between Thomas and Luke, in which Luke, like, what should have happened if Winnie ran away would be Luke gets whipped. Instead they
Yeah.
just have like a verbal fight. Like they're arguing like they're homies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so Tom Whalen freaks out because Winnie's gone, and
Mhm.
he's like screaming at Luke in front of everybody. He's screaming at all of the slaves, and then
Mhm.
he like trashes like some of their food and like
Yeah.
throws it on the ground and like stamps all over it or whatever. And he looks at Jake, the overseer, and is like, if any of these slaves try to fucking eat this off the ground because they're so fucking hungry, make sure they're shot on sight. Just kill them, right? And
Mhm.
says like, anybody who gets hungry enough to eat off the floor like a dog gets shot
Mhm.
like a dog is basically what he's saying, which like
Mhm.
first of all gross, and
Yeah.
second of all, okay, so Luke has the authority, I'm sorry, Jake has the authority to murder any slave who gets
Mhm.
hungry enough to eat cornbread, but
Mhm.
also reports to Nigel the slave, excuse me, Luke the slave,
Yeah.
also reports to Luke. So Jake has to take orders from Luke. Luke can talk to Jake any way he wants, up to and
Mhm.
including in this episode.
Mhm.
But Jake
Mhm.
also works for Tom and can shoot any slave that disrespects him. Which is it?
I don't know. I
Like,
don't know.
which
I
is
don't
it?
understand. I don't
I
understand
don't.
this show.
What?
I
Which
don't
is
know.
it? Like, I don't understand.
Like,
And then they give people future food.
yeah.
Dana feels bad because she's like, oh no, it looks like my butterfly effect moment has come. And I've fucked everybody on this plantation by letting this one girl go that was kind of shitty to begin with. Right?
Yeah.
Like, granted, like, shitty through no fault of her own.
Yeah. Well, she's kind of
Right?
an asshole. Like, just
But
a
was
mean.
kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
And you've got this situation
Mhm.
where like everybody is starving, and
Mhm.
Dana's like, don't worry, I've got you. Luke, you feel bad, everybody's mad at
Yeah.
you, because of course all the slaves are mad at him because it happened on his watch, right?
Yeah.
Which, like, again, I don't know that would have been accurate. I feel like other slaves wouldn't have been like, fuck you, you let this lady get away. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
It would have been
they'd be
like,
inconvenienced, they'd be upset, but like, I don't think anybody would be like, oh, Luke, you and your family are dead to me because, somebody escaped on your watch. Like, that's especially
also
considering
having
the
enough
fact that
time to
he
talk
doesn't have
shit.
breaks.
Yeah, they don't have
Yeah.
breaks.
Like,
When are they
so then
gonna
they
talk
give
shit
them
to each other?
fucking future food. They give them like Lara bars and shit. And I'm
Yeah.
like, so you're gonna give these people who barely have access to sugar,
Uh huh.
right? Like, they
They would
probably
have the
never taste any
shits.
kind of sweets. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. They'd be wrecked from our food. Like,
Oh yeah.
wrecked.
Because there's so many preservatives in our food. Like,
Yeah.
it's
That would
it.
go right through them.
Oh yeah. It would do nothing. It's like giving someone who's been vegetarian for like 18 years an accidental piece of beef and they're just
Yep.
like vomiting for hours on end.
Yep.
That's what would happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, the fact that like she tries to make this pact with Luke of like, hey, I've got you and your family. And he's like, what about the others? And she's like, I don't have enough for them.
Yeah.
This is what I got for you. So, like, it almost feels like some Orange is the New Black shit or something where you're like bribing somebody to like keep your secret. Like, it was just so gross and like out of place. And like, so what? He just signs on to fucking fuck over everybody else on the plantation because of this one lady? Like,
I
why
kind
would he
of
keep her secret?
like the thing too that I kind of hate is that, Luke cares about his kids usually above all else. Like, he cares about
Mm-hmm.
Nigel number one. That's all he cares
Yep.
about. So, like, actual Luke, if we were going off the book, if he was given food by Dana, he fully would have just set it aside for Nigel. That would have been Nigel's ration for as long
Yep.
as this went on. Luke would have
Yep.
starved with everybody else.
Yep.
So, couple things I gotta mention about this too is that A, we have not seen Nigel the entire episode. He has
Nope.
just been talked about.
That's it.
Where is Nigel?
Like, he's such a main character in the book. Like, he's such a major plot point in the book.
Yeah. And then, like, B, why is Nigel, or not Nigel, why is Luke also being Sam, right? It's Sam, I think, that, like, flirts with Dana and wants Dana to teach his friends, like, Luke
So
is
yeah,
also
because
that
Dana
character.
Dana teaches Nigel how to read I think, without Luke's permission in
Yeah.
the book.
Yeah.
Like, Luke finds out that Dana's doing that, and then is like, okay, well, if you can guarantee me he's going to be safe, and you're going to fucking take the brunt of this if someone
Yeah.
finds out, then you can continue, kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
Like, it's not like Luke is like, hey, I need you to help my boy get out, get out alive, or blah blah blah, right? Like,
Yeah.
that narrative doesn't exist, and I really hate the fact that, like, they keep trying to blur lines to, like, clean up the mess that they're making.
Yeah.
It's like, when in cartoons somebody's like sweeping and they're like
Hmm.
walking backwards and they're like stepping in the dirt to sweep it up, and so they're sweeping it up from the front, but then they're just making new tracks behind them. Like, that's what
Hmm.
it feels like. Like, they're trying to clean a house, but their feet are dirty or something. I don't know. It's terrible. Like,
Yeah.
it fucking sucks. And, like, the thing that I'm left with, so as we kind of discussed in our Kindred book podcast,
Hmm.
Outlander is very, very heavily kind of lines blurred on the plot between Outlander and Kindred, right? Like,
Hmm.
a white woman goes back in time to face her husband's ancestors versus black woman goes back in time to face her own ancestors, right? They've got parallels. One is more romantic, one is more sci-fi horror,
Hmm.
and so there's clear differences there, but also the plots are very similar.
Yeah.
So when you look at the show, right? White women who like Outlander get like 11 to 12 seasons of that shit,
Hmm.
of like hot ass Sam Claflin with his fucking shirt off, dripping with water, right? Coming out of
Hmm.
pools, looking
Hmm.
soaking wet and sexy, right? Muscles everywhere. They get like real good looking ladies if you're into ladies, right? There's a nice kind of buffet of
Hmm.
attractive people that you get to. Even the villain is kind of hot a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, you get some good eye candy when you're watching that
Hmm.
show. And I get it. It's more romantic than Kindred is supposed to be. But,
Hmm.
like, how am I watching this show and everybody's kind of just awful? Like,
Yeah.
Kevin's not attractive at all. Fucking Luke is handsome, but he's like not attractive the way he acts. Like, Jake is not
Yeah.
attractive. Fucking Tom Whalen's attractive, but he's a racist piece of shit, so it
The
doesn't matter
ant.
that he's attractive.
The
Like,
ant's
the
pretty.
whole yeah, but like what, I mean, what are we doing here?
I don't know.
What are we
Like,
doing?
I could be distracted by a hot person. You know what I mean? Like, if they
Yeah.
made Kevin just like outrageously hot for no reason, I'd be like, you know what, girl, I get it.
Right.
I
Right.
get it. But like,
Right.
they like have that whole scene of like Kevin bathing and him like walking towards the camera shirtless, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't doing anything for me.
No,
Like,
thank
I
you.
don't know if this is supposed to be like Darcy coming up out of a pond moment for us, but it's not doing any
It's not.
favors.
No. And that's what I'm saying yet again. So he bathes in public
Yeah.
in a river, which Jake is peeing into.
Yes.
Jake sees him, takes him all in,
Hmm.
sees all those tattoos of
Hmm.
skulls and shit, and doesn't think he's evil. Like, again, you can't even go to certain onsens in
Hmm.
fucking Japan with tattoos. You have to rent a private room because if
Hmm.
people see your tattoos, they might think that you're Yakuza. Like, that's in 2022 that
Hmm.
that exists. And in 1816, nobody cares that he's got a giant skull on his arm. Nobody thinks that that's voodoo or some kind of like devil worship.
They so easily could have just like covered it up with makeup.
Yes.
Like, it would not be that difficult. And the choice of them not doing it, like, if they should have had a actual conversation as soon as they got in the past of being like, yo, you gotta cover up your tattoos, blah blah
Yep.
blah. Like,
Yep.
don't bathe in front of anybody, don't do any, like, they could have played into it, and instead they're expecting us all to ignore it. Like, if I find out that Tom Whalen has a freaking tattoo, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Yo, it's gonna be sloppy like that.
I can
They're gonna
sense
be
it.
that sloppy. Yep. They're definitely gonna be that sloppy.
Also, why was freaking Jake peeing in the pond?
Because people used to do that back then. And I think to be like, fuck you to what's his face, because Tom Whalen obviously likes
Yeah.
him more than he likes Jake. But
I
this is what I'm
didn't.
saying. Like, so then like we see fucking Luke and Jake in a fight. Like, Luke
Yeah.
shoves Jake, and
Yeah.
then all Jake does is threaten him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so that was the thing that really, like, this is the thing that I'm taking away from this show, which is why I feel like white people absolutely meddled in the making of this show. There is
Mhm.
no there are zero scenes so far that I can think of. I could be wrong, right? Other
Mhm.
than maybe the first scene that we see with Dana potentially getting raped by that white guy, that like
Yeah.
random dude, there's almost no scenes of violence that white people visit on black bodies. Almost
Yeah.
zero scenes. Every time a black person gets hurt, every time there are black tears, every time there's black pain and suffering, it's at the hands of or only witnessed by other black people. It's
Mhm.
never because of white people. And I
Yeah.
don't understand that. Like, what kind of story are you trying to tell?
I don't.
Like, we were literally owned by white people. They could do
Mhm.
whatever they wanted to us. Even the descriptions. When Tom Whalen talks about the sexual like prowess and the sexual like fucking I don't know, like the sexual activities, for
Mhm.
lack of a better term, that he has with Winnie,
Mhm.
he doesn't like the way that he's talking about it isn't like it's gross, but
Mhm.
it's not disgusting enough for
Mhm.
what it actually was, right? Like Kevin, it would have been a really great opportunity for Kevin to go and she approves of that and him
Yeah.
going, "What choice does she have?"
Yeah.
That's the reality. It's not, "Oh, I took one of these slaves and I'm elevating her to white lady
Mhm.
status because she has her own house and I care for her and blah
Mhm.
blah blah." No, when he's like, "Oh, I got her a house so we're not rutting like pigs," that's for him. That's not for her.
Yeah.
Say that. That's the reality. Like, why are we doing this weird revisionist history where shit is just like
Not terrible.
favorable to white people? Like, why
Yeah.
are we worried about hurting white people's feelings
I don't know. Like every other
when we're
movie
telling
does
the
that.
truth about history?
Yeah.
Like,
Like every other movie downplays slavery pretty much. Like,
yeah,
why are you doing it in this, in which that is the main focal point?
I don't know. Like, it's fucking me up though. It's
Yeah.
fucking me up so
It's
bad.
just hurting my
And then
feelings.
like the only I'm gonna give the show this.
Hmm.
I did have in this episode the first completely canon to the book scene that we've had yet. It's taken 6 episodes to get here.
Hmm.
The 10 seconds that they spend in Tom Whalen's library where he finds Dana reading for the first time.
Yeah.
If you want to see the book in the show, go to episode 6, fast forward it so you get to the library,
Hmm.
watch that 4.5 minute clip, and then turn it off. That's as much as you're getting from the book. That
And
one scene.
even that, like, when she goes back in the room and he, like, Kevin comes in and is like, you have to be careful. And she gets all pissy with Kevin. Like, he didn't say, don't do it. He didn't say anything. Like, he said, hey, just be more careful. You know
Cause
what I
she's like,
mean?
"Don't you tell me my fucking business." But I'm just like, it's hard because in that scene, I was just like, she should already know that she needs to be careful. Number one, he shouldn't be
Yeah.
in a position to tell her that, right? What they're doing is that whole shit over again, right? Where it's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, like let me have this white man tell this black woman about her business. Like, let me have this white man educate this black woman about black music, right? Like they're
Mhm.
doing that again. They're having this white dude be like, let me advocate on behalf of all the black people, fucking Avatar style, right? White savior style. I'm going to
Mhm.
advocate for all these black people that you are harming other black person. Why are you harming your own people? You need to be
Mhm.
careful. I'm like, I swear to God, I swear to
Yeah.
God, this fucking show, like this show, I mean, I might have an aneurysm by the end of it.
Mhm.
I really might. Like, wow, wow, wow. Like, and she's staring at him and getting shitty with him, even though he's right. And like the fact that he's right just makes it worse.
Mhm.
The fact that he's correct in his assertions just makes it 1,000% worse. And like, I don't like, she's such an overwhelmingly privileged character.
Yeah.
Like in the book, there is so much of like a revelation that happens for her. There's so much enlightenment that happens for Dana. And Dana already knows a lot of this information about her history. She already knows a
Mhm.
lot of information about black history and slavery. And I would argue that most black people do. It might be a little different today, right? Gen Z, that might have been watered down through Gen Z because of our experiences. And there's a lot of things. I mean,
Yeah.
Beyonce is like the queen of the world, right? There are a lot of things that have made it easier for black people to kind of have a blurred line of how
Mhm.
bad things used to be for previous generations, right? Because
Mhm.
things are happening now that are arguably better. But then in 2020, I think it really mobilized a lot of people when George Floyd was murdered, right?
Mhm.
Like, to recognize the realities of this situation, to recognize the fact that to a certain extent, Black people are still kind of chattel, because it's left to a jury to decide if stepping on somebody long enough that you asphyxiate them is murder, right? Like, that shouldn't be a national case. It shouldn't be a national
Mhm.
case that if you fire bullets into somebody's house because you're serving a no-knock warrant and that person is innocent, that you murdered them. And if
Yeah.
the person is guilty, it's still murder, but you had
Mhm.
thought maybe they had a gun and therefore it's self-defense. None of that was the case with Breonna Taylor, right?
Mhm.
So like in 2020, I feel like a lot of people had to step back and go, I don't care that Beyonce is popular. I don't care that we had a Black president. I don't care that Kamala Harris is in office. I don't care, right? Or the Kamala Harris is running at that time, right?
Mhm.
None of that mattered. None of that mattered because the reality had hit, right? The reality hit. January 6th, when those white people stormed the Capitol and fucking ran down a Black officer, right?
Mhm.
Like, there's no blurred line there. So if you're talking about someone in 2016, right, who should already know about their history because she's about my age, and I know
Mhm.
how much I know about my history just from my mom educating me and reading books because it's never brought up in school, right?
Mhm.
She should know at least as much as I do, if
Yeah.
not more, because she's got a historical brownstone and a grandmother that lived there her whole life, right? If
Literally.
anything, she should have even more history than I do.
Yeah.
But
And like at
like,
the
she
point,
knows none of that?
I don't care how shitty your grandparent like is. If your grandparents raising you, I cannot fathom, like, especially in a historic brownstone. It
Yes.
I cannot fathom not knowing a single thing.
No. Nope.
And like
No.
the
It's
records
impossible.
were there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
S-
She has like a family tree.
Yeah.
Like it's bullshit. Like the whole way that this is constructed is just so sloppy. Like it's a fucking mess.
Mhm.
And like then we go back and have more conversation with white people, right? Then like somebody comes into town to visit because Margaret's like obsessed with Rufus taking a wife, even though he's still 10 years old, right? And like
Yeah.
they meet this new girl or whatever, and she compliments how comely the slave is, and I'm just like, this is dumb. Why would you compliment how attractive someone's slave is? Like, I don't. What is that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about these white people. I'm so sorry. Like, my partner is white. Both my partners are white, right? Like
Mhm.
my dad is white. Like, it's not that I am anti-white for anyone who's listening. That's not it at all. It's that this is a book that's supposed to be about a Black woman's experience, and there
Mhm.
are whole ass swaths of time where it's just white people talking to each other like
Yeah.
everything's normal and like everything is fine, and it has no place in this show. It has no place in this narrative. It has no place
Mhm.
in anything the Butler is doing, because that is not who she is, and that's not who she was. It's not what her work stands for. Like,
Mhm.
it's just awful,
Mhm.
and I hate it. And like,
I can't
I
wait
I,
to like
I
Ouija
can't
board
see a
Butler.
reason. Yeah, because like it's so I like her work is really great.
Mhm.
I am unfortunately not caught up because like time just has gotten away from me. I haven't read her Parable of the Sower, and some of those other books that are in a series. I have not
Mhm.
read those, but I read Fledgling.
Yeah.
And Fledgling is a diverse story. There's people of all races in it, right?
Mhm.
It's a vampire story.
Yeah.
People of all races are in it. But there's still a centralized plot about Black women and Black femininity and Black womanhood,
Mhm.
right? Despite it being a vampire novel. So
Mhm.
like, this is what I mean. Like, it's just not what she would have wanted,
Mhm.
and it's not what she would have written. Like, it's bad. Like, it's really
Yeah.
bad. And then like
It is.
the way that Dana talks to Winnie when she goes back to the cabin for a second, right?
Mhm.
Like she's just so like rude
Dismissive
and
too.
dismissive and like
Yeah.
holier than thou. Like, you're
Mhm.
talking to somebody who is raped every night by their slave master, and you're gonna talk to her like what? She's some piece of shit. Like, she's complaining too much. Of course, she
Yeah.
wants to go back where it's comfortable. She could be killed here, right? And Dana's like, well, if you go back there, he's gonna fucking hurt you because he thinks you tried to poison him. And she's like, but I didn't try to poison him. All the more reason to be kind to this girl. She is
Yeah.
literally a victim, right?
Yeah.
Aunt Sarah put the fucking poison in the icing.
Mhm.
She's going to get hurt because somebody else wanted to make sure that they had job security. And while, yeah, that sucks and is absolutely not something Aunt Sarah would have done, by the way, because she understands that shit, right?
Literally.
Like, they try to lump Aunt Sarah in with that other lady that tried to sabotage Dana in the book that they had to kick the
Mhm.
shit out of, right? So
Yeah.
shitty and ugly of them. But like, I understand why Winnie is scared. And Dana's like, just get over yourself. like basically looks at her and is just like, wake up.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I don't know. I don't get it. It hurts my feelings.
No one has a problem with the way that Dana or Kevin talk.
No.
In the book, they were like,
Nobody
why do you talk like that? Where are you
yeah.
from? He's like, oh, upstate New York. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're from like the wilderness then of New York. That's why you talk like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's like also everybody talks like really I don't know how to say this, but like modern, I guess.
yeah,
Like everybody talks the same way. And
yep,
that's incredibly strange for me. It's like the
yeah,
comic book. Like me and
yep,
you both noticed that in the comic book. We were like, ooh, like I don't know if they were terrified, like when they were writing this, of being racist or what
mm-hmm,
the fuck happened, because that's what it feels like. It feels
yeah,
like they were scared of getting like absolutely roasted by people who had never read the book. So
mm-hmm,
they just decided to not.
right.
But it's
To
like
not try.
if that's
But
your
it's
problem,
awkward.
yeah, don't adapt Kindred.
Yeah,
Adapt anything else. There's
yeah,
so much literature out there that if you're like, "Oh, I don't really want to like hurt any feelings or step on any toes because I'm worried people won't understand," then like don't adapt Kindred. Don't ruin it.
yep. Do not ruin it. So then we have Celeste,
Yeah.
Luke's wife,
Yeah.
who doesn't exist in the book. We have Celeste give birth.
I thought I was crazy for a second because I was like, I have no idea who this girl is.
Yeah, me either. Same.
Okay. Yeah, she
Um,
gives birth, starts seizing, and then they were like ask for Tom to come. Why?
yeah,
What's he gonna do?
I don't know. Like, he's not gonna save her. Like,
Yeah.
and like the thing that fucks me up the most, right, is obviously this is all Dana's fault. She goes into pre-labor and early labor because she hasn't had any food to eat, which means that like Luke took those fucking rations
Yeah.
and gave them probably to the kids on the plantation because
Yeah.
like if she had eaten something, like even if it was only a little bit, maybe it could have staved that off.
Mhm.
What it looked like she went through, just like understanding historical shit and having watched Downton Abbey, it looks
Mhm.
like she had eclampsia, right?
Mhm.
Like, which that used to kill many women back in the day,
Mhm.
and still is a problem. Like, still, you can still absolutely die from eclampsia today. Like, it can
Mhm.
be stopped, and we have medicine and treatments and stuff, but people can still die like that.
Mhm.
Black women. So part of the reason that this was so violent for me, there is a similar scene, two different similar scenes
Mhm.
in HBO's Reign of Fire or Reign
Okay.
of whatever it is, the new Game of Thrones show, the Game of Thrones spinoff
Oh,
about the Targaryens. I think that's what it is, right? It's
Rings
not
of
Ring of Power.
Power?
Ring
No,
of Power is
that's
Lord of the Rings on
yeah,
Amazon. This is, I think, Reign of Fire. I think it's what it's called. But
probably. I
anyway,
don't know. It doesn't matter.
so whatever, new Game of Thrones.
Mhm.
So there are two scenes in the new Game of Thrones, one of which results in death of a woman giving birth. And
Mhm.
like it's been panned, right? If you look it
Mhm.
up online, people are really offended by it. A lot of people stopped watching the show because of it. Like
Mhm.
it feels very gratuitous and unnecessary. This
Mhm.
scene is about on par. It's just less bloody. There's less blood
Yeah.
than the Game of Thrones version, right? It's offensive to have to
Mhm.
watch a woman go through that. Like you could just as easily tell rather than show. There's a bunch of shit they should be showing that they're not, and there's a bunch of shit they should be telling that they're not, right?
Mhm.
They can't decide which is better, which to me shows a lack of empathy and a lack of caring.
Mhm.
And as I'm watching this happen to this woman, right? As I'm watching her basically just like die on
Mhm.
in childbirth, like it's especially fucked up because this is still a problem. Because of racism in America, black women have higher mortality rates when they're pregnant than
Mhm.
white women do. Because
Mhm.
doctors, right? A lot of doctors carry their internalized racism, right?
Mhm.
Their subconscious racism and subconscious bias with them to their fields. So it's very difficult for a lot of black people, particularly women, to get good medical treatment in this country. I say that as somebody who had endometriosis at stage 4, which is the worst that it can get. I
Mhm.
was barely clinging to sanity one day.
Mhm.
Like I had completely lost it. I was clammy. I had been vomiting. I couldn't keep any food down. I was in so much pain. My eyes were rolling around in my head. Like I was gone. Like I was in and out. And my partner, who, like I said, is a white man, took me to the hospital.
Mhm.
So I go to the hospital. I give them all the information that they need to know about my condition. It only happens once a month, right? It's like 2 weeks out of the month. I'm
Mhm.
I'm in pain. It's really bad. Some days it's worse than others, and then this is the worst it's ever been. And it's
Mhm.
only when I'm about to have my period or do have my period. right? It's pretty obvious this is what's going on, right? Like, I
Mhm.
didn't know what endometriosis was, but when someone tells you I'm in extreme pain around my moon cycle, that should
Mhm.
give you all the information that you need to at least investigate that it's endometriosis or fibroids, right?
Mhm.
That's the most obvious answer for a patient that has a uterus, is to look
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
Hey, I have uterus pain. Okay, let me look at your uterus, right? That's the obvious answer.
Mhm.
I went to the first hospital. They made me drink barium liquid so that they could give me a CT scan because they were
Mhm.
like, it's obviously your stomach. And I'm like, it's not my stomach. It's my ovaries. It's cramps, but it's worse than cramps. And they were like, well,
Yeah.
cramps aren't usually that bad. So it has to be something else. I'm like, I have sciatica. They're like, oh, you must have a back injury. I'm like, okay. So then I go, they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. They dismiss me. They're like,
Mhm.
here's some Advil. Good luck.
Mhm.
I'm in a cold sweat,
Yeah.
like barely able to speak between like spasms.
Mhm.
So then I go to the second hospital. They're like, we already saw that you were seen by this other hospital in our network. We
Mhm.
can't see you. I'm like, yeah, but they
Mhm.
didn't get to the core of the issue. I need help. They were like, nope, go somewhere else.
Mm.
So the third hospital was a private hospital, which of course is going to be more expensive. They
Yeah.
check me in, right? Only after the woman is like, I can't give you drugs, ma'am. Okay. I understand you really want them. You look like you're going through withdrawal pretty badly, but I can't give you any drugs. All right. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I can give you Tylenol. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, we have drug cessation programs if you need it. Okay. If whatever you're addicted to, we can get you the help that you need. Assumed that I was lying about my pain and
Oh
that what
my
she was
god.
actually seeing was me having withdrawal symptoms until I finally just lost my mind.
Uh-huh.
I screamed at the top of my lungs. I got up off of the bed. At this point, I had bled through my pad because I'm sorry, dear viewer, if this is
Mm.
TMI, but
It's fine.
I was bleeding so profusely that
Mhm.
like I got up and there was like blood there. And I'm
Mhm.
like screaming at this lady with like what power I had left in me. I don't care about your fucking drugs. I just want to know what's wrong with me. I need this to stop. I am in pain. I need this to stop. And I'm like crying.
Mhm.
Like my partner is like holding me up because I can barely support myself with my own legs. They put me in the hospital and still don't look to see if I have endometriosis. Just put some drugs in my system, waited until I felt better, and dismissed me.
Jesus Christ.
Thousands of dollars in hospital bills for them to not hear anything that I said. So if that happened to me in 2012,
Mhm.
what was it like in fucking 1815, 1816,
Yeah.
right? For this lady. Like, black women die in childbirth all the time because
Mhm.
of provider bias,
Mhm.
racial bias from their healthcare providers.
Mhm.
And you're going to put this in a show. They just came out with a documentary that's also available on Hulu
Mhm.
about black pregnant women's mortality rates, right? Like they just made a brand new documentary that is on
Mhm.
Hulu right now that you could watch right after watching Kindred on Hulu. That's all about mortality rates in black women, and yet you still put this in your show and you drag it
Yeah.
out. It's not even like it's quick. Like it's a good like what
It's the
10-minute
majority of the
scene.
episode, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, it
Like
felt.
it's brutal.
Yeah.
Like it is brutal. Like no white people are responsible for this violence, right? Why are
Mhm.
they showing these close-ups of this woman seizing? There's no content warnings on any of this,
Mm-mm.
right? No content warnings whatsoever. Why do we have to watch black pain this way? Like, why are we instructed to watch black pain this way? Like,
Yeah.
over the last however many years that people have been, really using social media to combat police brutality, we've been watching
Mhm.
black pain and
Yeah.
suffering, right? That's real. Why are we revisiting this in this way, especially manufactured? I could see if you were showing what happened in the book, revisiting the pain that Dana sees and that Dana experiences, right?
Mhm.
And that other people in the book experience, fine. That's one thing, right?
Yeah.
That's what the book is about. The book is about black suffering. But
Mhm.
to introduce new ways to make your black woman characters suffer,
Yeah.
like that's atrocious to me. Like it's atrocious. Like were the actions and consequences in the book not good enough? Like I don't understand.
I feel like the hardest part to me too is that this is like played in a way of like, obviously this is something that can occur to today, and it
Sure.
really does not have anything to do with slavery.
No.
Like, that's the part that like really fucks me up, is that like this is an awful thing to happen to a human being, but like it still has nothing to do with the circumstances Dana finds herself in. Like,
I
this can
can
happen to anybody.
yeah. At any point, at any
Yeah.
time. I can only assume
Mm-hmm.
that the reason that Celeste is there and the reason that we see her lose her baby and go through all of that is because when Kevin is away
Mm-hmm.
and Dana goes back to her time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And comes home, she's like, "Why are you different? Like your eyes have changed.
Mm-hmm.
What is this about you? Like what's happening?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine that the reason that we're getting this version of events is
Mm-hmm.
because Kevin tells her that he saw a black woman slave tied to a tree by her wrists and
Mm-hmm.
beaten until the baby fell onto the ground. That does
Yeah.
happen in the book.
Yeah.
That is something that Kevin sees. That's the only reason that I could possibly think that they would have this scene in, because they thought, well, it's not as bad as that. But at least that is showing the realities of slavery. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't care that you were pregnant. It didn't matter. The only reason that it mattered is because they had another slave that was going to come out of you soon.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't care if they were hurting you in the process, as
Yeah.
long as the baby was healthy. And granted, Tom Whalen does come in and say, save the baby. Who cares about the mother?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, save the baby because, like, we can have more kids, especially if it's a girl. She
Yeah.
can make me more slaves, basically, even though they don't have him say it that way, which is how he absolutely should have said it, because that's how he thinks.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I just, I mean, it's horrifying. Like, it's horrifying. Like, down to, like, we kind of skipped over the scene where, like, that one slave is they're all talking at the table, him and his white guests, and she has, like, her stomach's growling
Yeah.
because she's so hungry. And, like, it's super obvious in the room. I'm like, is this supposed to be comic relief?
I don't.
Because the
I think
gurgling is
so.
like it's comedic, like,
Yeah.
almost. Like, the look on the slave's face, the lady's like, oops, like, is this supposed to be funny?
I don't know. Like, it just does not make sense to me at all.
Like,
Because
she's serving at the table and her stomach is growling so loud that the other white guy is like, is everything okay with your slaves? And he's like, oh yeah, you caught us in the middle of disciplinary measures. And then the guy goes, well, hopefully you solve it soon. And that's the end of the scene. I'm like, why did you need this scene in this show? Like, what purpose did this serve? That other white people don't care that you mistreat your slaves? Like, I don't understand.
well, it's like the thing that I think bothers me the most about this is that if this was true, just actual slavery, he would have like whipped people
Yeah,
and done the food strike. So
yeah,
like pretending that like Tom Whalen isn't that bad because he's only making them go hungry
yeah,
hurts me. It really
yeah.
hurts me
It's
because
gross.
it's just at this point these aren't even rose-colored glasses. Like they've
No.
sharpied them in, you know?
This is what I don't understand, though. Like, at the end of the day, right? If you compared this to another marginalized group of people, right?
Mhm.
Let's say you've got a show about the Holocaust,
Mhm.
and in the show there are Nazis, and the
Mhm.
Nazis are evil. They're
Mhm.
hot, but they're evil,
Mhm.
right? They're physically attractive,
Mhm.
but they're also terrible people,
Yeah.
right? Who don't really care.
Mhm.
And one of the Nazis takes one of the Jewish women out of the internment camp and gives her her own house
Mhm.
because he's sleeping with her, right?
Mhm.
Not raping her, sleeping with her.
Mhm.
Even though that's obviously not what she wants, even though she probably has a husband,
Yeah.
right? Who cares? Then you've got scenes in the internment camp where Jewish people are hurt, but it's just Jewish people hurting other Jewish people. It's not Nazis hurting Jewish people. All the Nazis are doing are like laying it on thick and saying, hey, don't you look me in the eye, Jewish person,
Mhm.
and, you know, threatening to slap Jewish people around if they don't act right.
Mhm.
But the only pain and suffering that Jewish people are experiencing are at the hands of other Jewish people.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Why
Nobody would be
why do
okay
they
with
think
that.
it works here? Like,
I don't know.
I don't understand.
Like, I don't know if they assume that like people are just going to be happy that there's at least a movie with black people in it, or like I don't I'm just confused. Like I just don't get it. I don't get it.
At all. At all. I miss the point of this show completely.
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching it and I'm just like, black people should be offended. White people should be everybody who watches this should just be like, fuck this show. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know who it's for. I don't know if it's for white people. I don't know if it's for black people. I don't know if it's clearly not for anyone who's a fan of Octavia Butler and her
No.
work, right? It's clearly not for you if you like Octavia Butler.
Mhm.
But like, I don't I don't understand it at all, and it's deeply offensive. Like, again, if the roles were reversed and this were about Jewish people, I'd be equally offended, right? I
Yeah.
would be just as offended if this were the story that I just kind of like compared it to, right? Of like
Yeah.
Jewish people that like are in this situation because Nazis put them there, but then the Nazis aren't really that bad. Like that's disgusting. Like that's fucked up. Like you can't show somebody's history and then minimize it, right?
Mhm.
Especially a history that we're still seeing the ripples of today, right?
Yeah.
It's not as though it just completely vanished and this is like Neolithic times and we don't really know what happened and there's saber-toothed tigers and shit, right?
Yeah.
Like this isn't like there's no supposing what happened. We
Mhm.
have actual slave narratives that tell us what happened.
Mhm.
First hand accounts from both white people and black people of what slavery was actually like, right?
Mhm.
It's not like white people back then thought that they were like evil for doing
Yeah.
this, right? They thought that they were just and right in the world, and that it was because they're white that God gave them the gift of slaves, right?
Mhm.
To quote unquote educate and use for their own purposes, right? White, it's not like white people were walking around like, haha, I'm so evil using human beings like animals. That's
Yeah.
not what they thought. So when they wrote about it, and there were white people writing and theorizing about slavery back then, they justified it. Even,
Mhm.
I mean, we talked about this briefly in our last podcast. Even Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? Harriet
Mhm.
Beecher Stowe wrote that super piece of shit racist Garbo novel, right? As an abolitionist,
Mhm.
she was on the side of abolishing slavery. What she was trying to do was show how human black people were, right?
Mhm.
It's super offensive. It's a horrible book. When you read it now, it's awful, right? It's
Mhm.
shocking. But back then, it was like, why is this white woman so sympathetic to these black people? Like it was
Yeah.
seen as like a triumph of humanity, right? Like, how is this show worse than Uncle Tom's Cabin?
I don't know.
I don't
I'm just so
understand.
confused.
So then Dana and Luke go out, and Luke Dana finds Luke digging a grave for his dead baby and his dead wife. And you find out that the baby isn't even Luke's. It's Tom Whalen's. Because
Yeah.
ever since they were kids, which I don't, again, they can't, I'm going to circle back to ever since he and Tom Whalen were kids. I'm going to
Yeah.
circle back to that in a second because it
Yes.
shows how sloppy this fucking show is. It makes me
Correct.
crazy. Um, like, he's talking about how he and Nigel are going to be there until they die. And in my head, I'm like, number one, you could be sold at any time. So why do
Mhm.
you think you're going to be there until you die? Like,
Mhm.
slaves understood their realities because their families used to get sold off. They knew that they wouldn't necessarily stay on a plantation. Part of
Mhm.
what kept slaves in line was the threat of being sold away from their families. So
Mhm.
him saying me and Nigel are going to be here until we die. No, he would never say that. Right.
Yeah.
So then, like, it's 1816, right? We've got over 100 years of slavery in America at this point.
Mhm.
He has illusions about his life.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, I'm
Tom
totally
tells
getting a
him, "Oh,
cabin in acreage."
yeah,
No.
yeah, I'm gonna get a cabin in an acreage." So he's probably about 35. So in 35 years,
Mhm.
you think this man is a man of his word? This is the first time that you're surprised he didn't stick to his word. The first time that he had sex with a woman that you loved, that you were courting.
Mhm.
That wouldn't have been the first time that you went, "Oh, this motherfucker right here."
Yeah.
And then circling back to the ever since we was boys. Okay, number one,
Mhm.
that palatial estate clearly belongs to his first wife,
Yeah, it belonged to
not
Hannah.
him. He doesn't have money. He
Mhm.
got lucky marrying Hannah, right?
Mhm.
It's obvious. Margaret Whalen has no money either. They keep their shit alive by trying to leech money from the Broduses, who are the new relations of Hannah, right?
Mhm.
The relations that are left behind. Hannah's sister, and then her man, right? Her
Mhm.
husband. So like if Luke and Tom have known each other since they were boys, since they were children,
Mhm.
where did he grow up? Because Aunt Sarah was Hannah and what are her sister, Isabel, I think her name is, or whatever his sister's
Isadora.
name is, Isadora. So Isadora and Hannah grew up with Aunt
Mhm.
Sarah, and Aunt Sarah establishes I've been here longer than anybody.
Mhm.
So that means that that's where Hannah grew up. So
Mhm.
how has Nigel known Tom all this time? How have they known each other since they were
Luke.
boys? That, yeah, how has Luke known him since? And this is what I'm saying. So confusing because Luke is in like nothing of the original story and it's mostly Nigel, and now we only have Luke, and
I
I'm extra
know.
confused. I'm so sorry. But like, how is it that Tom and Luke have known each other this entire time, right? Since they were boys,
Mhm.
but also this is not Tom's plantation. It's his plantation now because his wife died.
I don't know.
Like,
I,
none
like,
of that
don't
makes
get
any
it.
sense. Like, none of
It
that makes any sense.
it's
What?
it's so badly written.
Like, it's so sloppy. Like,
Mhm.
I've never seen such sloppy writing. Like, there's nobody that's trying to kind of look for continuity. Who edited this? Were they under a time crunch? I don't understand.
I
Did we
don't
rush to get
know.
this out?
Like,
Like,
the thing I don't understand about this is why is it that every adaptation so far we've had of Octavia Butler's stuff, like the comic book and now this,
mm-hmm.
so bad. Like it seems like they're being like pushed to get it out,
Yeah,
you know? And
yeah.
I don't
And not taking the time to actually read the book and
yeah.
have like and have an actual analysis, in-depth discussion about it. Like, that's what it seems like. It seems like somebody like read through the book, was like, wow, black girl time travel, that's really cool, we should make a
Mhm.
movie about that. Didn't understand the bits and pieces
Yeah.
and just erased it from it. Like, the comic book I can give a pass to,
Mhm.
only because they're trying to abridge the text, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to condense it so that they don't have this gigantic omnibus
Mhm.
sized book, right, of the comic. That
Mhm.
I understand. It's a lot of frames, it's a lot of panels to illustrate. I get it, right? Fine. I will give the tiniest of passes to
Mhm.
the comic. But the show,
The
like,
show
it's flagrant. It's flagrant. It's an abuse of power, in my opinion,
Mhm.
of being able to have the hubris that you could improve upon something that was already so excellent.
Yeah. I just I don't understand. I really don't. Like so the only thing I was thinking about the other day too about the show is the thing I will give them a pass is if they wanted this to be 3 seasons over 3 years and they don't want Corona to be involved. That's what I was thinking about recently.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like still in modern day, not much time should pass.
Mm-mm.
So I don't get it. Like I don't understand why
Mm-mm.
it's dated in 2016, or simultaneously you could have just said okay it's present day but no corona, and I would have been like
Yeah.
yeah I get it because you don't want to have to deal with
Yeah.
bringing a actual pandemic into the past, and that's fine.
Absolutely.
Like it doesn't make sense, and there's so many flaws with this that I just don't understand. I don't understand at all. Oh, and then we got to talk about Kevin telling Margaret to leave Tom.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
See, this is what I'm saying. So that whole section, I just wrote, I don't care about these white people. I
literally.
didn't take any
Why
notes
is
on
that
it because
happening?
I was like, I don't care, dude. Like, between her like rolling up on him hard and him being
Hmm.
like, leave him and go find someone who can care for you, and then she like puts her hand on top of his, like, hey baby, you can care about me, and he's
Yeah,
like, ugh, no. And then like when she leaves though, he's like, Walmart, Walgreens, Target. I'm like, does this mean you're tempted?
I don't know what that means.
Is his reaction of like having to like remind himself that the future exists, is it because like he's tempted by Margaret?
I don't
Like,
know.
you know what I'm saying? Like, if he's
Yeah,
there with Dana, they just spent the whole night fucking. Like, you'd think it wouldn't be difficult for him to resist this racist white woman who's not even that cute, right?
yeah,
But like when she leaves, he's like trying to repeat his mantra, like he needs to, I don't know, like fix his mind or something. I don't know. Like, I just,
I
oh,
don't know.
ugh.
It's just I'm gonna be honest, and this may be a little controversial, but I would have been a lot more pleased if they didn't allow a single white person to write, direct, or anything this entire movie.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely. But that's never going to happen because you
I
know that,
know.
like, again, I feel like what happened was I would love to have read the original script. Whatever was
Yeah,
originally presented, that's what I want to get my hands on. I want the
yeah,
original script. Because again, like when you have a mostly black crew and a mostly black stable of directors, a mostly
mhm,
black community of writers, there are some names in there that are obviously not black people. Some of them sound like they might be Jewish people, which again, like I feel like if you have a Jewish writer that understands genocide, right, which slavery
Mhm.
was absolutely a kind of genocide, American slavery, like when you have someone who understands that, they're not going to do shitty things with the text, right? So in my mind, I'm like, who made the final decisions, right? Was this, and everybody decided that we didn't want to make it a big bummer, so instead they decided to like to change a lot of the problems that were happening in the original, but then created new worse problems
Mhm.
through that? Or is this a situation where we're talking about one person at the top seeing this very true story to the
Mhm.
book that's being made and goes, oh no, well, that's too much? Because I get it, right? Like the last Harry Potter book, right? I'm not about Harry Potter. Fuck turfs. Fuck J.K. Rowling, right?
Mhm.
But just using it as an example, the very final Harry Potter book has "Get away from him, you bitch!" Right, with between Mrs. Weasley and Bellatrix, right? It's
Mhm.
got one of the Weasley twins getting his ear ripped off, right? It's got
Mhm.
blood. It's got cursing. It's got like if you actually adapted the last book of Harry Potter, word for word, scene by scene, frame by frame,
Mhm.
it would be rated R, right? Like
Mhm.
when you show things, they definitely get more visceral, they get scarier, they get worse, they get more
Mhm.
intense, right? I totally understand that. Showing every single thing, like for example, the woman being tied to a tree that's pregnant and getting beat until she has her baby, right? That would be a horrific thing to have to watch.
Mhm.
That would be revisiting some serious harm and doing harm to your audience. I understand that. But don't show it at all and talk about it if that's
Mhm.
the case. Have
Mhm.
someone verbally say, this is what happened to Celeste, instead of showing this black woman in pain. Have
Yeah.
Olivia come out with blood all over her. I couldn't save her.
Yeah.
Why do you have to show the actual scene of this lady, a close up of her face as she's seizing? Anybody who has like epilepsy or who has any kind of brain disorder, like that's going to
Mhm.
be fucked up for them to be watching a show and then suddenly have to deal with that. Like there should be trigger warnings and content warnings all over this content, like
Mhm.
all over it. I mean, like I don't understand how this isn't just common knowledge at this point, and it's super duper offensive.
Mhm.
Like it's heartbreaking,
Mhm.
honestly, to me, what they're doing to this. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
And like I'm glad that like I have you to talk to about it, like
Oh, I
because
would have
I
stopped if we weren't doing it for the
listen,
podcast.
oh my god, I would have stopped forever ago. But like I'm glad that I can at least talk to you about it because
Mhm.
you've read the book, because not a lot of people have read this book. So when I'm trying to talk to people about it, I can only tell them what it should be versus what it is, right?
Mhm.
But even that is like a really long-winded discussion. I can't just
Mhm.
be like, so remember this in the book? Well, I have to be like, so in the book,
Yeah.
once upon a time, right? And I have to like recount the entire thing. So
Mhm.
like I'm very very thankful that like you and I took the time to do an in-depth analysis of it, because like I
Yeah.
love that book so much, and being able to talk to you about it is really helping. Like I am so crestfallen over this show, and I could not be more happy. Like I could not be more excited that we only have 2 episodes left. I could not be more thrilled.
I know. See, the funny thing too about this book specifically is this book is exactly what I wanted for the longest time. Like for history, I
Mhm.
wanted to be told in a way like this book tells you. Like I wanted everything to be able to be narrative instead of having to read a
Mhm.
textbook and like try and distill down exactly what's happening, because you get like two paragraphs about World War II and you're like, okay, now I know everything. If you
Mhm.
instead gave me something like this where it's written for a modern reader and be like,
Mhm.
here's the tragedy that occurred, it's a lot easier for most people to experience,
Absolutely.
you know. And this is, so this book like was something I wanted for so long but didn't know how to get,
Mhm.
and for them to do it to this, like, this book of all books, it's so incredibly important.
Yeah.
It irks me,
Yeah.
and I don't get it. i don't
No.
I don't
Nope, it's
understand.
it's it's deeply hurtful,
Yeah.
honestly. And like it hurts even more to be in a position where I have to like negatively critique a show that
Mhm.
like should mean a lot. A
Mhm.
show that does have a lot of black people working on it. Like I don't want to trash Jasnica Bravo or the guy that's the showrunner or like any of these people. I don't want to trash them and make them feel bad about their work. Like that's not what I
Yeah.
want to do, right? Like I want to uplift black creators and
Mhm.
I want to see them do more. I did like some of the directors have done other things that have been great,
Yeah.
but like I'm watching this and I'm just like, this is awful. Like this is really brutal, and it's dark and it's grim dark almost, and it's like gratuitous, and it's it's just beyond offensive.
Did you
And
notice they took the coloration out of the, like, you know how they made everything like really like black and gray color scheme in the past?
Mhm.
Do you notice they kind of
Yeah,
took that out? Like that doesn't happen
yeah,
anymore?
yeah, yeah. I did notice that. Like, so side note,
Mhm.
I was browsing Netflix the other day,
Mhm.
and I saw a movie that was in the hidden gems section called Sankofa. And I'd heard of Sankofa. Like, I did some black cinema studies in college. I took a couple of classes.
Mhm.
We did watch Sankofa. We watched, a couple of other movies that were also kind of really important, that were standout movies in, black cinema and history.
Mhm.
Um, but I've been meaning to watch it, and I kind of
Mhm.
forgot about it for a while, and then I happened upon it the other day.
Mhm.
I'm gonna watch that and let you know what I think, because the theme of Sankofa is there's a woman, a Black American model,
Mhm.
who is on a shoot in Ghana, and she wakes up finding herself transported back to slavery. So I don't know if that's maybe an early attempt at adapting Kindred, if
Mhm.
it's just borrowing the story of Kindred, if Butler is in any way credited toward it. I haven't really been able to do any research because it was like last night, really, or like late, like it was like one in the morning or something that I
Mhm.
saw this last night. So I haven't had a chance to really look into it, but I'll do that research and I'll report back as to whether or not it is something that, might be borrowing from Kindred, and how they treat it, because it's not a new movie at all. It's an old movie. I think it's from the 80s maybe. So yeah, I'm curious to know if it echoes Kindred or if it's based upon Kindred.
Mhm.
Um cuz there has to be something better than this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Yes. I do have to mention the final note though of this episode,
mhm.
just because I feel like we're getting to the wrap up phase. Um, what the fuck was up with Margaret just being at the door? Was that supposed to be her listening into the whole conversation? Was that supposed to be her coming on to Kevin? Like, I don't understand what that scene was. I was very confused.
So, I think the reason for that is I personally think that the reason for that is because Margaret puts her hand on Kevin's hand, right? Is
Hmm.
interested. She makes a move, right? She looks at him like, maybe we can be together. He
Hmm.
hesitates. I think she read that. And this is another reason why I was like, was he tempted?
Yeah.
Because she goes to his door, I think, because again, at the very end, one of the last things we see, Tom Whalen calls Kevin into his office, and Kevin's like nervous to go,
Yeah.
and he gets there, and Tom's like, "Oh, Margaret told me she wants to take music lessons with you. She wants to
Hmm.
learn how to play the piano, and since Rufus isn't as musical as I thought he could be, she'll just take half of his lessons.
Hmm.
So you're teaching both of them, right?"
Hmm.
Which is a cheap ass thing to do, number one. And number two, fine, right? He's going to teach both of them. So, of course, he's like, fuck, she's going to want to nail me and she's going to flirt with me every lesson. And that's going to be rough and whatever, right? We're going to be sitting next to each other at this piano bench. She wants to spend more time with me, yada, yada. So, like, when she goes to his door, I think it's to be like, hey, we're going to be seeing a lot more of each other. I think she goes there in a romantic way,
Hmm.
to be like, hey, like, I thought about it, I'm going to leave him. Or, hey, like, you gave me this advice earlier and this is what I
Hmm.
think. Or, hey, you're going to make it bearable for me. I'm just a little old white lady, and like my husband is terrible and you're a big nice white guy and you need to take care of me, right? Like, I think
Hmm.
that's what it was. I think she was knocking at his door to talk to him in either a romantic or friendship way.
Hmm.
But when he opened the door a little too wide and she saw Dana standing there, she walks away, because I think in the next episode there's going to be hell to pay, because
Yeah.
Dana has already been talked to about not staying in there. He's already been told that she can't stay in there, and yet there she is in his bedroom, on top of the fact that Margaret is going in there to try and flirt with him.
Like, why would you not be like, Dana, get under the fucking bed right now or
Why wouldn't
something?
she hide? I don't know. I don't know. This is what I'm saying. I didn't even write a note about it because I was just like, this is bullshit. This is such nonsense. Like, this is absolute garbage, and I don't want to interact with it anymore. I got so tired by the end I didn't even write about him going into Tom's office. I didn't write about any of
Yeah.
that in my notes. I was just so upset. I was just like, whatever.
Oh, I did note that all of the lamps in that entire house are 1000% electric, not even like nicely trying to fool you at all. It just made me kind of laugh. Like, so little care was put into this movie.
I hate it.
I don't know who came out with the red pen to like change things because I feel like you do, where the original script was probably great and someone came in and ruined it, and I just
Yep.
want to know who. I just want to talk.
Yeah. I don't know. The first electric streetlights were in 1878. Like Faraday invented the electric motor in 1821. So like there was definitely like the beginnings
Mm-hmm.
of electricity. But like
Not every single lamp in your entire house of a not so well
certainly not.
off
Certainly
farmer.
not. On a plantation in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
And if you're going by the book standards, a poor plantation out of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere. No.
I
No.
just
No. Just no.
no, can't deal.
Nope. Nope. No.
I just don't even know what to say.
Me either. I feel like every episode ends this way, where we're
I
just
know.
like, well,
I can
there you have it.
promise when we do Interview with a Vampire, the book, you guys will have a lot more fun. That's all I can
Yeah.
say.
Much more fun.
Yeah.
Much, much more fun. Lots of sassy takes in that one.
Oh yeah. That book is just a lot better, like than this
Yeah.
movie, you know?
Yeah.
TV show, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh God. I just no thoughts. No more
Nope.
opinions.
Nope.
Just sadness.
Just sadness.
Well, Candace, where can the people find you and your stuff?
You can find me at Candace the Magnificent on Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. You can find me at that Candace Girl on Twitter. Please follow me if you like more hot takes from Black non-binary people, as well as TTRPG content, improv, video game streams, and ukulele concerts. I do a little bit of everything, so
Yeah.
come hang out with me and be entertained.
Yeah, and it's very good. And we will
Thank
catch
you.
you all in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.